Hello, everybody. We're recording, of course, for our class now. So that's going to be fun this semester, but I think it's actually going to work out pretty well. So what I want to do is I want to go over UV unwrapping with you guys again. I know my A class, I think we got through all the UV unwrapping, but it never hurts to have these videos. We'll actually be starting to do some Mudbox stuff this week coming up, so I'll definitely have some videos up by the end of the weekend for that stuff. Um, yeah, and I think my intro B class, we still have to do the unfolding for some of our parts. So the nice thing is we're going to have some UV unwrapping videos for you guys, which will be great. So really what I wanted to go over today was unwrapping the room, the desk, and the end table. And really just kind of focus on getting you guys used to some of the UV stuff really quick. Remember, UV unwrapping is the process of taking a 3D model and basically turning it into a two-dimensional model, right? It's actually its own set of coordinates. UV coordinates are really their own thing as well, but they're kind of like a separate geometry. But what we do is we kind of like peel them like labels and unwrap them and flatten them to be two-dimensional. In fact, really that's all UV means is just X and Y for texture space. Because the textures we're actually painting later on are actually going to be two-dimensional images. Targas, PNGs, JPEGs, things like that, using Mudbox. Um, so, that's kind of basically what UVs are. And we've kind of talked about that before, and we do our conferencing. I'll kind of briefly run over that stuff again. But remember, UVs are really just the process of taking a model and turning it kind of into another set of coordinates that are related to this. You'll see that they're kind of, they match, if you will, but the other one's going to be two-dimensional because it's for textures. Now, really, that puts us in the position where we want to see where we can get our UV editing tools at, right? And so if we go to workspace here, also it's a really good idea to make sure that your models are, their transforms are frozen. That can actually affect things like automatic mapping, which we're going to use somewhat, and even our unfolding, which we'll do in a separate video. So remember, just like we delete history and organize our outliner, and those are good things to do, and we've done them a bunch in class. Remember, freezing transforms, and remember that's just selecting your objects, and you can go to modify, freeze transformations. So in this case, I'm going to go over to workspace here. And you see it's a My Classic, but we're going to click on this. And remember, this is kind of something we introduced you guys as well for the first time, was the idea of workspaces, right? And there's a lot in here. We're not using all of them, right? We're sticking with mostly My Classic this semester just to get used to the normal My interface. But there is a UV editing one, which is actually pretty cool. So we just click on the little workspace pull down here, UV editing, and that brings up our UV editing menu. You see we have our normal 3D space right here where we can use our Alt, left, middle, and right mouse buttons to kind of navigate. Those actual same navigation quick keys work in the UV editor, right? Alt left moves, because you can't rotate. This is a 2D view right here, the UV editor. Alt middle moves, and Alt right mouse zooms. So just like normal. In fact, all your selection types work in here. If you hold down right mouse button, vertex, edge, face, UV are there. And even your move, rotate, and scale tools will work, and all your normal selection tools, pick marquee, drag. In fact, you'll notice there's a UV editor here, but there's also a UV toolkit. So when switching UV editor, you kind of get your little little mini UV menu right here. In fact, usually this will be kind of closed right here, create, and that's what we're going to be really looking at in this video. So we'll just open up to create one by clicking on that triangle. And we can see here's our UVs, and you can kind of see it looks like the top of it. Now yours might look a little different. I actually did a test run on this video, and the audio didn't work, so I'm re-recording it for you guys. So basically we can kind of see right here that it really is the top. You might actually see top, then you might see some other areas that will just look weird compared to this. So yours might not look identical to this one. It's okay. So in this case, when we look at this, we can see that we have a couple of things up here. We're not going to go over everything in the UV editor, right? You're not supposed to become UV experts, but we do want to give you a good foundation, right? And some of the big things are things like here for overlap, right? You can kind of see where there's red, showing there's going to be a lot of overlap and weird stuff going on with the UVs. That turns it off. That is 4 and 5 though, right? 4 is the normal, 5 is shaded here. Remember in 3D view, 4 is wireframe, 5 is shaded. Here it's kind of your kind of overlap and stuff like that, right? It's your shade UV options, and you can kind of see overlap there. Usually we're not looking for having red. It's usually we want kind of blue. You can see we have a lot of purple here because these UVs are not perfect, right? The UVs really aren't going to be that good when you first open up any model, right? It's trying to UV unwrap on its own and it just doesn't do a good job. So you can see that there is something here in the UV editor. It looks like a little checkerboard, right? And if you click on that, that shows you your distortion grid. And you see it's really just this nice little checkerboard texture. That's what we're looking for, right? Because you can kind of see if we turn this off, really this is the model, right? But it's two-dimensional, right? And it's got its own coordinates, so if we do stuff to this, it'll affect how it looks in here, but the model itself's fine and it just affects how the texture goes on. But the distortion grid's a great way to see low distortion, right? Because that's one of the things we want, is we want low distortion. We can see that our floor and our ceiling look pretty nice, right? You can actually see that those checkerboards are pretty much look perfect. That's what we're looking for, right? That indicates low distortion, right? That's exactly what we're looking for. That means when we go to paint a texture, it's going to go on and look nice on this model. We can see, however, that the walls look horrible. They look like bars. Yours might even not quite have that, depending on if you have your models at home or if you're going to use this one, because I realize you might not have access to some of our files because of the school going online for the rest of the semester. So I'm going to make available these actual quick models that I threw together. You notice they're kind of the simplified versions of what we did in class. I just threw them together pretty quickly because we just need them for texturing. So you might see, you'll definitely see some of these where you have the bars. You might see ones where it just looks blank. And then you'll see ones where it looks like it's static, right? Kind of like from Poltergeist, the movies, and stuff like that. But generally you want to see the checkerboard. And if you're not seeing the checkerboard, you're seeing blank, or like it looks really staticky on a TV, like on old TVs, or bars, that's not good. That's not what we're looking for. Now, the distortion grid can kind of be annoying right now, so I'll kind of turn it off, right? It's just a toggle right here. So what we want to do is we want to talk about a few types we have, right? Our floor and our ceiling are in good shape, so we don't have to worry about those. But I'm going to start kind of with the window here. So I'll zoom in a little bit in the viewport. Remember, Alt right mouse button zooms. If I hold down right mouse button, of course you have your selection stuff, right? And this is the preferred way, and we've talked about this a bunch this semester. But if you hold down right mouse button, it's the preferred selection type, right? Vertex, edge, face, object mode. I'm going to go to face. Remember, of course, you have those controls right here for UV Toolkit and even in normal modeling toolkit. And there's even quick keys for that stuff, right? So if you go to select components, there's quick keys for those. But really, I prefer it, and the teachers at COGS will prefer it. You kind of find it's a professionals prefer holding down right mouse button your selection types. And of course, I'm just going to left click, shift left click, and of course you want to hold down tab for drag select, right? That'll work as well, of course. It's great. I love tab for drag select. And that is actually in UV Toolkit. So you'll find pretty much all your normal navigation and selection stuff and move, rotate, and scale all work in the UV editor also. There's a good amount of continuity between the editors. So in this case, I just want to select these faces here. And what I wanted to do is the create menu, right? It's right here. We kind of click on that triangle to open it up. I'm going to shift left click on planar, right? If you hold down shift, particularly in UV Toolkit, if you shift left click on a tool, it'll bring its options up. So shift left click on it, and it brings up the options for planar mapping. And you see that it's got things like best plane, which is actually right here also in the create menu in the UV Toolkit. You'll see there's camera, right, which is right here. These are actually the same stuff. They're just kind of pulled out to here, right? Also, you might have this checked off, but I have it checked on, keep image width height ratio. What that'll do is you'll notice the wall is actually a bit of a rectangle, not a square. If that's off, the UV projection will be square. So I'm going to hit project. Actually, we have to pick an axis. Right now it's at the Y, and that's your that'd be great for your floor and ceiling because that's the Y axis. But in this case, you can see the X axis goes this way, which is going to be great for like this wall. But you'll see how kind of this wall is selected. And if you actually look down here, it's kind of more along the Z axis. So we want to pick project from Z axis. So we hit project, and you'll notice it gives us this kind of little square projection type. Now you'll notice you can click on this little kind of red T or L in the corner, and that gives you your actual ability to rotate it or move it or whatever you want to do. In this case, I don't want to do that, but you can do that, right? It's that little little corner right there. It looks like a T or an L. Click on that, and it brings up your normal super manipulator. It has move, rotate, and scale functions. And you notice we actually see what looks like the wall now in the proper UV editor, right? And that's what we really wanted, right? And you'll notice a planar projection. It's really just a projection that's a rectangle or a square, kind of like like a poster or a bumper sticker, right? And if I check on that checkerboard, right, you'll see that we can actually see that checkerboard's on there perfect now, right? That's indicating that those UVs are pretty good. We're not really going to worry about the UVs inside of here, right? We're not trying to unwrap every little part on all of our models perfectly. Just enough to get you guys overall nice looking textures and give you a good overview of the major tools, right? So we can actually planar project specific polygons at whatever axis we want to. And we can even adjust the rotations for those if we need to as well. So now we can see that wall's unwrapped pretty well. So now what we can do is we can go to this wall right here. Now you'll notice I've got pick marquee on, right? And that's fine. That'll work great for this. If you're zoomed in far enough, right, inside the room definitely, you just kind of do left click drag, right? And just kind of give that little box, a little dotted box, and just selects those guys right there. And of course, we can go back to planar. And in this case, you'll notice that this wall's on a different axis, right? It's going to actually be on our x-axis. So we shift left click on planar, and we can switch to x-axis. Remember that was just shift, hold down shift on your keyboard, left click on planar. And we project, and you see that does a great job for that as well. All right, so planar, that's how planar works, right? Now I want to show you something else above it, normal based, because this is actually what I tend to use more than planar. I just want to make sure you guys know that planar has an options box, and you have the ability to pick the axis you want, X, Y, or Z. And you can see kind of the floor and the ceiling are already well done, and those would be y-axis, right? Because they're going up. Now what I want to do is I want to select these guys. Now, of course, once again, I can do a small little left-click drag because I've got pick marquee on by default. And you can toggle distortion grid off, right? So if you get annoying or it just hurts your eyes to look at that checkerboard, which I know sometimes it can, it's a toggle, right? You can turn it off and on. So in this case, this wall is at a bit of an angle, right? It's at a 45-degree angle instead of kind of being exactly along the X, Y, or Z axes. So in this case, if you're going to use planar, you'd have to click on that little red T or L and rotate it manually. But the nice thing is there's actually a way using normal based or best plane to do that. Normal based kind of the newer version of best plane, but they usually are pretty indistinguishable. But in particular, normal based uses the average normal direction of these polygons. And this normal direction, if you remember, normal direction is just the direction the polygon faces. So these polygons are kind of pointing this way, right? You also notice kind of I can see through the model as well. Remember, that's just shading backface culling. Remember, that's kind of, you don't usually need it for most objects, but for like the room, since you're going to be inside the room, it's a great way to kind of just have that backface culling on so that way you can kind of see through the one of the sides of the polygons, right? The back faces. They're made invisible. So normal base will actually use the average normal direction, which is pointing this way. And since they're all coplanar, it's basically the same normal direction. So we hit normal based, and there we could see there. And we turn the distortion grid on, we could see perfect. But you see in the UV editor, you can now see the wall looks like the wall, right? And that's what we're really looking for. Now in this case, I'll just leave checkerboard on, just so I can kind of keep running you through these. I can do a little quick box select on those, normal based. I can go in here and I could kind of just do a left click drag, just kind of pretty much get all the polygons for that wall. Maybe hold down control to deselect that one right there, right? Because I kind of extended past that. And then we could do normal based. Remember, drag select, of course, will work for this stuff as well. So if you hold down tab, you can just left click drag, right? You don't have to keep selecting one at a time. You just hold down left mouse button, tab, and left mouse button, just move your cursor. And remember, it's right here too. Drag is right there, but it uses the same quick key. Normal based, there we go. And then of course I can kind of grab those, normal based. But any way you want to select them is fine, right? If you just want to do a quick little left click drag box using pick marquee, that's fine. If you feel more comfortable with drag select, hold down tab, left mouse button, move your cursor, drag selects. Remember, Maya has overall a pretty good selection of selection tools nowadays. And now we can see that all of the walls and the ceilings now have that great looking distortion, right? Or low distortion, or zero, in this case, zero distortion. So that checkerboard's great for showing that off, right? You want that. You want these walls to look like checkerboards. So that is the room using kind of a planar and its cooler cousin, if you will, normal based, because they're both basically planar projection types. And remember, planar projection types are really just rectangle projections, like think of posters or bumper stickers and stuff like that. So in this case, I can turn that off, and I'm going to save this scene really quick because I do want to run through quickly doing the Endtable and the desk really quick. So I'm going to go save that. I'm going to go File, Open Scene, and we're going to find Desk really quick. Open that up. And here's our desk, and you see I've kind of already grouped it into just a handful of objects. It's easier than having every single object, so I made sure they were combined. But also remember, if we go to Workspace My Classic, you'll notice that I've got the transforms frozen for these, right? That's important. So when you're combining these and all that stuff to make them fewer objects, combine them. There are still a few objects, so I'm actually in a later video going to go over grouping with you guys because it's something we haven't really covered that much this semester, and I want to talk to you guys about it more. It'll be useful when we put the room all together and we start to do more texturing on it. But freezing transforms and having those frozen can help certain tools like automatic mapping, which we're about to cover, and unfolding, which we're going to do in the next video. It helps those to work a lot better. Remember, that's just modify freeze transformations. All right, so I'm going to go to back to workspace, UV editing, and I'm going to use a shortcut tool, right? This is going to be one of those things you're going to go, well, why didn't we just use that for the room? You totally could have. But by doing the room more manually, we see that planar normal base allows us to specifically pick an axis or even kind of the average normal direction on specific polygons and apply planar projections. And there are going to be times where you're going to need that. So it's great to know that you can do those, right, with normal base and planar, right over here. Remember, that's just UV toolkit, create menu. There is another way to do this. So I'm going to turn on distortion grid again. And once again, your UVs might be a little bit different than mine, particularly if it's your model, because I actually kind of had to redo some of this stuff again really quick just by putting bad UVs on them, right? So yours might look a little bit different here. That's okay. Usually the UVs that mine will give you, or any software will give you, aren't that great, right? And you can see the top's fine, but the sides are horrible. So what we can do is, instead of using normal based or planar, there's something called automatic. And what automatic really does is it does a planar from the top and the bottom, the left and the right, and the front and back. So it's really just doing 6 planars from kind of the different major angles. And that's great because it kind of makes it pretty easy to unwrap really boxy stuff. So I'm just going to hit automatic map on that object. And you can see, there we go. Right? Go back to object mode, and we can see that that's actually pretty good. I'll turn distortion grid off, and you can see that it's a lot of parts. There are sewing tools, right? It's one of the things that if you go to cut and sew, you can actually, select edges kind of in here, and it will actually select a corresponding edge elsewhere, and you can do things like, by opening the cut and sew, you can just do stitch together, and it'll move and stitch those together. So if you want fewer seams, you can easily do that after an automatic map. It's just an automatic map is just a really quick way to get you good, pretty much zero distortion stuff. And for things that are architectural in nature and really boxy like desks, this is going to tend to work out pretty well anyways. You will notice that there is some pixels that are missing, right? There's areas where there's no UVs. Those are pixels that won't be used. And in particular for this semester, but in general, just since we're not trying to make you super UV experts, I'm not going to worry too much about you guys making the perfect packs here, but generally you always want to kind of try to pack it so they take up a little more of the pixels, particularly for games where you don't want to waste that many pixels. Not really wrong at all, but just that's wasted pixels that won't be used in the texture. So that's automatic mapping. I can just kind of go to the desk cabinet here, automatic map that, and there we can see that the automatic mapping is done for those, right? And you can see there's no overlap, right? So if I kind of turn this on, you can see that there's no overlap at all. In fact, if you hold down the right mouse button and go to face selection in the UV editor, right? So if you hold down the right mouse button in the actual UV editor, it brings up its own kind of selection options. You could double click on a face and it selects connected just like it would with the normal 3D space. And you can hit W for move and you can move it over that. And you'll see there's now slightly darker color, right? So that purple's, that blue's kind of turning a little bit more kind of a different shade of blue. And that's indicating there's overlap. So we're generally trying to kind of get no overlap, none of that red, which with automatic mapping, we're in pretty good shape for. So you're not really going to have to worry about that too much, but never just talk about it, right? And these we're just going to put actual material presets on later, so you don't have to worry about the little knobs and stuff like that. That's actually just going to be done with materials instead of textures. But you'll now see that the UVs for the desk are in pretty good shape for us, and it'll serve our purposes. So I'm going to save that really quick. And then I'm just going to open up the Endtable just to quickly run through automatic mapping one more time. And you can see once again that the transforms will be frozen, right? If I go to my classic, you'll see that those are all frozen, right? For those different parts. And that's just modify freeze transformations. So I'll go back to workspace, click on that pull down menu, UV editing. And I'll turn my distortion grid on, right? That little checkerboard. I'm just going to hit automatic map. There we go. Go back out to object mode. Remember, hold down right mouse button so you can bring up your marking menu. Go to object mode. I can select this one and automatic map. Go back to object mode. Remember, hold down right mouse button. Select that one, automatic map. And remember, you can always kind of get back out to object mode just by holding down right mouse button. Holding it down, right? And then you have your selection options here, object mode. If I just shift left click, right, add selections, you can see those are all actually pretty well laid out now. Obviously, there's a little bit of dead space. There's more seams that are necessary. Although, like we said, for architectural stuff, there's a lot of natural breaks and seams anyways, so it's not as much of an issue. And if you really want to cut and sew them, you can, right? There is the cut and sew menus. And we'll see that actually the particular cutting tool and the unfolding features on our next video. But automatic mapping will work pretty well for this. There will be a few pixels that won't be used, but for what we want to do, this will work pretty well, and it gets you starting to use the UV tools. All right, so that's it for the UV unwrapping video. I'll make another one for the unfolding tools. Yeah, all right.